Shalom Ispacha. We're here with another book for the Lost Tribes Found series. The book's called Lost Tribes and the Promised Lands, The Origin of American Racism by Ronald Sanders, 1978. Alright, I'm going to start you off at the top of page 77. All of his life, Columbus's idea about geography were permeated with a particular religious mechanism. He kept a book of prophecies in which he collected quotations, mostly from the Bible, often those dealing with isles far off, that seemed to prophesy his own discoveries. His personal copy, still in existence today, of Pierre d'Ali, Imago Mundi, a kind of Christian Plinian synthesis of world geography, containing numerous notes handwritten in the margins that are of a similar religious import. D'Ali was one of the writers who convinced the young Columbus that the western route to the Indies must be fairly short, but the strength of his influence on the later seems, judging from the notes, to be largely due to the pious factor. Although his geography was for the most part scientific, D'Ali does not hesitate to try to establish the location of the terrestrial paradise, and the marginal notes in Columbus's copy show consistent interest in this quest. At one point, the notes even leap ahead of the text in their enthusiasm for this discovery. D'Ali, after describing the blissful climate said to exist in certain regions of the West, goes on to say continuously, and most likely terrestrial paradise is like this, and perhaps even the place which authors call the Fortunate Islands is like this. But the marginal note more rashly concludes, terrestrial paradise, perhaps in this place, is a place which authors call the Fortunate Islands. Later on, the notes are more willingly to be skeptical about the location for Eden, but Columbus never ceased searching for it, and went to his grave believing that his discoveries had brought him close to it. A striking element in Columbus' geographical religiosity is his intense and abiding interest in the fourth book of Esdras. The two apocryphal books of Esdras purport to be additional writings by and about the Old Testament Ezra, but the second or fourth book is a piece of full-fledged Hellenistic apocalyptic writing that was often regarded with suspicion by the church and just as often embraced by the heterodox. Augustine had given guarded approval to Esdras' prophetic claims, and much was always to be made of this by the later's defenders, including Columbus. In the marginal notes to Columbus's copy of D'Ali's is a relevantly lengthy discourse on 2nd Esdras 6:42, which reads, page 78, which reads, "Upon the third day thou didst command that the waters should be gathered up in the seventh part of the earth. 6 parts has dried up and kept them, to the intent that of these some being planted of God and tilled might serve thee." This was often to be cited by Columbus, who argued that since only 1/7 of the world was water, and a good deal more dry land than yet was known remained to be discovered overseas. But Columbus seems to have found more in Esdras' geographical argument. Here is one of the things he writes about this verse in his marginal notes. "But this prophecy is not accepted by the prostrate Jews, yet it has been accepted by the innumerable ones amongst them who have believed in the Gospels. Israel has thus been split into 2 branches, a division predicted as inevitable by the prophet Samuel to King Saul. The reprobate Jews themselves hold Esdras, that is, the Old Testament Ezra, as a canonical authority." Alright, so real quick, what that means was Christopher Columbus used the Bible, especially the book 2nd Esdras, to know that there was the other lost tribes that had traveled over here in 722 BC from the capture of Salmanaster in Assyria. In the book it talks about them traveling, or us traveling over here in ships that took a year and a half, and that the Most High had stopped the waters for us to make it here. So he used the books and his prophecies well, not his prophecies, but a book of prophecies that he made for him to find us over here, that he knew that we was over here. Alright, I'm going to continue on. Alright, now we're going to go to page 364. Among New World Moranos, blessed be the name of the Lord, who has not made me an idler, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian. When suddenly he stopped. Those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. Pondering this thought incredulously and yet with growing conviction, he resolved that if he ever was released, he would seek out the Indian Francisco and try to learn the truth. Montezimo's story, unclear as the circumstances of his incarceration, is equally unclear as to those of his release. But released he was, and he immediately went to Francisco, revealing himself as a Jew. Montezimos proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were of the same race as he. Would Francisco lead him to them? The two men were soon back in the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation, marching relentlessly for a week before they finally came to a halt. It was a Saturday, Montezimos makes a point of telling us, and they that had come to a river larger than the Douro are there echoes of the Sabbatean, and all of this here, Francisco announced, is where your brothers will be seen. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually a canoe appeared, bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to a place where Francisco and Montezimos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in the Indian tongue that Montezimos could not understand, although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montezimos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Elohim Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. Alright, that was the Jewish way of saying it. The ancient Hebrew way of saying it is Shema Yashar Allah AhighA Anawa AhighA Akkad. Alright, now we're at continuing to page 364. A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montezimos, whose fluency in it is almost as perplexing to the reader of his narrative as it is that of his 3 mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. The day when they were at last to issue forth into the world was coming soon, they explained, but in the meantime they could not allow visitors to cross over to them. They were willing to make an exception in the near future, however, on account of their need for education, for though they spoke Hebrew, they could not read or write it. Would Montezimos send them 12 bearded men to be their teachers? He said he would. The 4 strangers returned to their canoe, paddled back across the river, and disappeared from view. Francisco told Montezimos all he knew about these people from his own. Top of page 365, people of his own traditions. His ancestors, to their eternal shame, had indeed made war on them and persecuted them. Only the sorcerers of his tribe had perceived that they were a special people and had given warning that they should be left alone. The God of these children of Israel is the true God, they had said, and everything inscribed on their tablets is true. At the end of days, they will be lords over all the nations of the earth. One nation will come bringing many things to this land, and after we have all been provided for, these children of Israel will go forth from where they now are and reign over the whole earth as they once did. With this final flourish, Montezimos had turned his tale to the lost tribe into a bit of propaganda for the Dutch conquest of Brazil at the same time. That's what I have for this book. Get more with you on some other books. Come. Shalom, everyone. Amor.